Can I have your attention, please? Can I have your attention, please, for just a few moments? All right. Shh. It's an amazing trick. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. I'm John Miko, the Executive Director of the Union League Legacy Foundation. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to tonight's celebration and kickoff of the Legacy Foundation's programming year. As is our tradition at the League, at such events, I would ask you to please join the Chair of the Education Committee, Steve Target, as we pledge our allegiance to our flag, to our Constitution, and to our Republic. Steve.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to a great leader of the Union League, the 70th president of the Union League and the second chair of the Union League Legacy Foundation, Mr. Jim Dunnigan. Jim.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Let me add my welcome. I'm delighted that you're all here with us this evening. These are bright lights, I will say that. But it is a great pleasure to be with you. And as John said, tonight is our occasion to thank our donors, program sponsors, our volunteers, and leadership for all that they have done to make our work a reality. It's a chance to celebrate what we have accomplished, our opportunity to look forward, and to renew our commitment. I would like to take a moment to recognize a group of leaders who have led the League and the Legacy Foundation and are such a big part of the success of both organizations. Past presidents in the room, Greg Montanaro and Charlie Davidson, you're out there. Raise your hands, thank you. And of course, recognize the great work of the 72nd and our current president of the Union League, Mr. Craig Mills. And I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge one of our leaders who sadly passed away last month, Jim Straw. In addition to serving as the 61st president of the League, he was also chair of the Abraham Lincoln Foundation, and as past president Frank Giordano referred to him, the cultural conscience of the Union League. And also a big thank you to all of the staff of the Union League. I won't name you all in person, but raise your hands. Thank you for John and staff. Thank you for all that you do. The Legacies Foundation mission is to create more engaged, responsible citizen leaders. We do that through exhibits, lecture programs, Mondays with Monday, Good Citizen Day, and other civics education programs, scholarships, tours of the League House, and publications. In all, we had nearly 50 distinct programs last year that reached over 20,000 participants. We are also entrusted with the care for our important art and Civil War archival collection. These collections are used by scholars and researchers and are on loan to national museums and institutions, and also used in our own exhibits and displays. These are not static collections. They help us tell the important story of our history. As you know, this past year, we commissioned a new work of art of Frederick Douglass. And I'm pleased to announce tonight we have commissioned another portrait of a patriotic American, Lucretia Mott. Mott was an abolitionist. Thank you. Mott was an abolitionist and women's rights leader who worked hand in hand with the League during the Civil War and the post-Civil War era. This painting will be unveiled in December of this year. And thank you for all that are helping support that commission. All of this work is made possible through your support and generosity. On behalf of the Legacy Foundation, I thank all of you for your commitment to this important work. We are truly grateful for your support. I also want to thank the volunteer leader of all of our fundraising efforts, Dr. Gary Dorsheimer. Gary, are you in the room? Gary leads the development committee for the foundation. As Union League members, we cannot just be proud of what we inherited. We must also continue to work to preserve, improve, and sustain that heritage. Fundraising is certainly an important component to support our efforts. Equally important is friend raising. So I would ask you to tell all of your fellow Union League members of your support of the foundation and encourage them to consider doing the same. The Union League is an institution of leaders in all industries and professions, entrepreneurs, medical doctors, corporate and cultural leaders, capitalists, and scholars. One such leader is Alan Guelzo. He is one of the most celebrated historians of our time, a scholar, teacher, public intellectual, and perhaps more importantly, he is the recipient of Union League's prestigious Abraham Lincoln Award. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our fellow Union League member, Alan Guelzo.
We know that the American Civil War is a part of our history. What we don't often appreciate is how recent that history really is. My great-grandmother was born 1 month after Abraham Lincoln's inauguration in 1861. My grandmother, who attended the old George Clymer School in North Philadelphia after the turn of the century, remembered vividly the visits made to her classroom on what they used to call then Decoration Day by elderly Union veterans in their blue uniform jackets and their blue military caps. When I was born, there were still a handful of Civil War veterans still living. It has not been as long ago as we might think. Nor is the Civil War so far removed from our present concerns as history might suggest. Abraham Lincoln saw very clearly that the basic issue of the Civil War was a test, a final exam, if you will, about the possibility of democracy. We were founded as a nation, he said at Gettysburg, on a proposition that all men are created equal, and that we have been plunged into a great civil war to determine whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. The nation survived that test and prospered, and through it, the beacon of democracy, the government of the people, by the people, for the people, has not only continued to shine, but has bathed the whole world in its light. But it was not like that in 1863. Lincoln's world was still a world dominated by kings and emperors, by monarchs and aristocrats, who wanted nothing so badly as to see the American democracy collapse in on itself, and thus show that all democracies, however attractive they may sound in theory, really are practically unworkable and unstable, and always liable to fly apart whenever they develop a serious disagreement within themselves, which of course we did over human slavery. Even in Lincoln's America, there were many voices which called democracy into question, which praised the rule of the few over the many, which spurned commerce and business as too dangerous and too likely to upset the social order. Those voices were called the Confederacy. Lincoln needed help, and he got it. From the soldiers who volunteered, who fought, who gave the last full measure of devotion that he praised at Gettysburg. He got it from friends of democracy in other places, from the noble friends of trade and manufacturing in England, Richard Cobden, John Bright, John Stuart Mill. And he got it from Philadelphia, from George Henry Boker, and the Philadelphians who gathered around Boker to form the Union League nearly 160 years ago. And they did it in the teeth of formidable opposition. Although Philadelphia was a northern city and a free state, it was also the closest of any northern commercial center to the slave-holding southern states that formed the Confederacy in 1861. And it had developed, through its aggressive Board of Trade, links with the South, which oriented its prosperity southwards. Some Philadelphians would have been happy to see the city join the Confederacy. If the Union is to be divided, announced Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice George Woodward, I want the line of separation to run north of Pennsylvania. But the League and Lincoln triumphed. And in no small measure through the dedication of Philadelphians like Boker and his co-laborers, Horace Binney, Morton McMichael, Jesse Fell. When Lincoln sent his personal secretary, John Hay, to Philadelphia in 1863 to meet with Boker and the officers of the League, Hay wrote afterward, I met at the Union League rooms George H. Boker, one of the most lovable of men, and more than lovable, noble. The loyalty of a truly patriotic Philadelphian, Hay wrote in his diary, is of that magnificent and uncompromising character such as is not seen elsewhere. It is carried into every incident of life. Every incident. They recruited regiments. They paid to publish pamphlets. They gave money. Sometimes they even donned the uniform themselves. And they saved the Union. And they honored the man who led them in that saving, Abraham Lincoln, as the greatest man who had walked the American landscape since Washington. And today, the Union League is a monument to their efforts. But the League is by no means a static monument, remembering a name and a time and a people whose time does not really touch our own. No, their struggle really is too close to us on history's clock to be dismissed that easily. Today, all around us, nations rise up to laugh the idea of democracy to scorn, to beat down their neighbors and their own people with iron rods of oppression, to mock the example of a nation conceived in liberty as a failure. And once again, there are no few voices within who question the integrity of what America does and has been, that dismiss the relevance of that proposition that all men are created equal and of the man who spoke it, that believe that democracy can be bought, and that those who refuse to be bought, or those who work honestly and diligently for their families and communities, can be discarded as of no importance. They deface statues of Lincoln. They try to remove his name from schools. We even hear talk, the loosest talk imaginable, of civil war again. Those voices do not actually call themselves the Confederacy now, but their basic assumptions are the same. Lincoln and the League worked on an entirely different set of assumptions. Even before the League was formed, Lincoln spoke here in Philadelphia at Independence Hall on Washington's birthday in 1861. All the political sentiments I entertain have been drawn from the sentiments which originated and were given to the world from this hall in which we stand. I have never had a feeling politically that did not spring from the sentiments embodied in the Declaration of Independence. And that was not just an expression of antiquarianism not just a historical flourish to mollify Philadelphians in the city where the Declaration had been written. I have often pondered over the dangers which were incurred by the men who assembled here and adopted that Declaration of Independence, Lincoln said that day. It was not the mere matter of the separation of the colonies from the motherland. No, that separation was a question of politics rather than principle. No, it was something in that declaration giving liberty, not alone to the people of this country, but hope to the world for all future time. That was what made the Declaration memorable to Abraham Lincoln. The Declaration set forth truths of natural right for all nations everywhere, truths hardwired into every human heart and every human mind by the hand of their Creator. What the Declaration announced was that the adolescence of the human race was now over, that we were ready at last to advance into the full enjoyment of those rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, unbridled by dictators or crowned heads who imagined that they had been born, saddled and spurred to ride the rest of us. The Declaration, said Lincoln, gave promise that in due time the weights should be lifted from the shoulders of all men, and that all should have an equal chance. All men, black and white, male and female. A promise to a fugitive from slavery named Frederick Douglass, a promise to a paper hanger from Irish South Philly who was my grandfather. Rather than surrender that promise, that American future, Lincoln said, I would prefer to be assassinated on this spot than surrender it. Only 4 years and 2 months later, he would indeed be assassinated for that promise. And he would lie in state in that same Independence Hall while a crowd of 300,000 mourners stood in lines that stretched as far as the Schuylkill River to bid him farewell. But those sentiments did not die with Lincoln. Their echo has not faded entirely away after only 160 years. And that echo resounds mightily in the memory and heart of the Union League. The Declaration Lincoln loved, and the Constitution that he compared to a picture of silver which surrounds the apple of gold, and the oath to defend it, which he considered registered in heaven, are as much the guideposts of the League as they were for Boker and Binney and McMichael and Fell. But like the sacred scrolls of the law, they must be defended. That is what the League did then, and what it must seek to do now. And how? The Legacy Foundation points us the way. In the work of the Legacy Foundation, the League does 3 wonderful things. First of all, it preserves a record of the past through its marvelous archives. Now, many of us today enjoy the Union League for its restaurants, its golf courses, its good fellowship. How many, though, have added to it a view of our Lincoln letters? We have 3 of them, you know. An 1842 legal document, an 1863 letter to George Boker, an 1864 letter to F.J. Dreer. And not only that, but the diaries of soldier veterans from Philadelphia, like Charles Herring and George Varick, or the letter of Alexander Wallace Givens, describing his motivation for enlistment in the Union Army. Givens described the event like this, that in a dream, General Washington appeared to me, looking me in the eye, and said as he raised his hand in a solemn manner, this country must and shall be free. Then he vanished. When I awoke and told the dream to my wife, I said, that means for me to go and fight for my country and my flag. My wife said, go, and God be with you. We speak at the League of our motto, Amor Patriae Ducit, love of country leads. And whose love of country would not be kindled more brightly by a 10-minute glance at such words. Second, the Legacy Foundation educates through its Liberty series of speakers and through seminars for teachers and students which it hosts here and in conjunction with other organizations. And then third, the foundation is a constant reminder to every part of the League of what our founding commitments were and remain, to the principles of the Declaration, to the majestic sovereignty of our Constitution, to the openness of a society where, as Lincoln once said to a regiment of Ohio volunteers, where any one of your children may come to live here as my father's child has. It was a struggle to order that each of you may have through this free government which we have enjoyed an open field and a fair chance for your industry, enterprise, and intelligence, that you may all have equal privileges in the race of life with all its desirable human aspirations. This inestimable jewel Lincoln talked about is the birthright of all Americans. To the paper hanger's grandson and to the son of the hedge fund manager alike. It is a birthright that belongs to all religious believers equally, a birthright that insists, in the words of Justice Antonin Scalia, that the freedom to speak and to persuade is inseparable from and antecedent to the survival of self-government. A birthright that declares that presidents and congresses and courts are not kings, but servants, whose powers are held in an equilibrium to each other and subordinate to the people. When the Constitutional Convention met in Philadelphia in 1787, George Washington, as the convention's chief officer, insisted that its deliberations, all through that unendurably hot summer, be conducted behind closed doors, and, to the discomfort of the delegates, closed windows. When the convention finally adjourned with the Constitution in hand, a crowd assembled as the delegates exited the old State House, Independence Hall, and they shouted questions. What do we have? A monarchy or a republic? In words which have been repeated countless times, Benjamin Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." We have kept it. George Boker kept it. Abraham Lincoln kept it. The League has kept it. Through the cauldron of the Civil War, through the testing of continental expansion and 2 world wars, through moments of doubt and even despair. But Franklin's "if" is still pertinent, like the memory of those old Civil War veterans. Franklin's "if" lies not so far in the past that we can take the answer for granted. The "you" in "if you can keep it" remains us. And in the League, our agency for keeping that answer, a republic, is our legacy foundation. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, again, for Alan Guelzo. Thank you, Alan. Alan, I know many of you know Alan, and he's been a speaker here on many occasions. We're working on a date where he'll be back in 2023 for a program. He will be one of many wonderful programs over the next calendar year and program year. You will all receive an email tomorrow, which will have the calendar. Our next Liberty series is with Bob Woodward. Bob Woodson. And I know we have that on tape. Who I know, Alan, you work with quite closely, and that's not Woodward. So please look for that. And if you want more information on the Mott portrait, please see Kristen Moran. I do want to ask our great leader, our president of the Union League, Mr. Craig Mills, to come up and say a few words and offer a toast to all of you. Mr. Craig Mills.
Thank you, John, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You may have already discerned by the fact that I come to the podium with a martini glass that the nature of my remarks will be somewhat different from Professor Guelzo's. In my brief and inglorious career as a public speaker, I have from time to time been told by other speakers on the program that I'm a tough act to follow. And I never really thought that much about that until tonight. Now I know exactly what they were talking about, and it stinks, frankly. It's just not a great feeling. Thank you, Professor Guelzo, for those remarkable comments. I will not attempt to emulate them in either scope or depth and quality. My mission here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is much more simple, but I hope no less important. I'm here to thank two people on behalf of the Union League, our board of directors, and all 4,200 of our members. First, I'd like to thank President Jim Dunnigan, a man who served the League long and loyally in a variety of positions until he agreed to accept the mantle of our 70th president. And as our 70th president, took the audacious step of purchasing that horrible fly-blown wasteland, which was appropriately known as Sand Barrens, which over the course of the last 5 years, through dint of great effort and talent and creativity, has become the golf wonderland that we all know as Union League National today. Not satisfied with that, President Dunnigan has agreed to take on the leadership of this august organization. I thank you, Jim, for taking up once again the mantle of leadership. And I'm confident that under Jim's leadership, this organization will move on to even greater heights. The second person I came here tonight is you. Each and every one of you here in this room tonight, the individual supporters and members of our Legacy Foundation. It's funny, I was thinking tonight as I was chasing around the member of our professional staff who had those little cocktail franks. Every month, twice a month, for the last 3 years and 9 months, either as vice president of membership or as president, I have gotten up in front of large groups of people, many of whom I didn't know, and I have told them that notwithstanding the fact that the Union League owns and has been able to buy or build so many wonderful social amenities and facilities over the last 10 years, golf clubs and wonderful dining rooms and swimming pools and tennis clubs and hotel rooms, and notwithstanding all the fantastic social activities and opportunities that we afford to our members, the Union League of Philadelphia is not a social club. We're not an eating club. We're not a golf club. We're not a club at all. We're a league, and there's a difference. We have a terrific time around here tonight. You're all having a terrific time tonight, but we don't exist merely to amuse ourselves. We have a higher purpose. We have a mission, and that mission, as Professor Guelzo said, is summed up succinctly and well in our motto, love of country leads. I've said those words over 70 times over the last 4 years to probably close to 10,000 people. And those words were easy to say because I knew they were true, but they were only true because you made them true. Through your efforts, your dedication, your support. Because of you, love of country leads is not some hollow bumper sticker phrase. It's not some snappy slogan that we stamp into a cocktail napkin or stitch into a golf shirt. It is an animating call to action that continues to lead us every day to support the Constitution and the free enterprise system, limited government, individual rights and individual responsibility, to support our military and law enforcement. Visionary leaders like Jim, Joan Carter before him, John Miko, they can set the course, and they have. They can steer the ship, and they will. But the ship doesn't move without you. You are the motive force. You are the caretakers of our 160-year tradition of service to country and community. Without you, none of this means anything, and it all falls apart. But with you, I am confident that the Union League will sail past its 160th anniversary at full steam, headed for even greater shores, greater destinations. Thank you all. I'd like to close now with a toast that John has asked me to give, a toast based upon remarks made by Justice Antonin Scalia about our Constitution. And I'm happy to do that because just as Abraham Lincoln is our patron saint, to extend the religious metaphor, the Constitution is our Bible. And Justice Scalia is my favorite Supreme Court justice ever since I had the opportunity to have an extended conversation with him about Marbury versus Madison in the locker room of the Capitol Hill Club when I was a first-year law student at Georgetown. One of the more memorable aspects of that conversation was Justice Scalia was completely naked throughout the entire time. That did nothing to dim his enthusiasm and his grasp of the constitutional issues, but it threw me a little bit. It was kind of like having a high-end constitutional discussion with a very short, very powerful, very articulate bear. But I do honor him for that, and I wish I could tell you something that he said during that 45-minute conversation, but I was distracted by other things. But one thing that Justice Scalia did say that I honor, and that is included in the books of the Constitution that we make available to our members and to Philadelphians and people from all around the country. He made the comment that in England, at every formal dinner or an event like this, they give a toast to the Queen, and it's become the fashion in America on our side of the Atlantic to give a corresponding toast to the president. But that really isn't appropriate because the president isn't the true font of our freedom. They're supposedly the guardians of it, but they are not the origination of that. The toast really should be to the Constitution because that is the document, and with its predecessor, the Declaration of Independence, that all of our freedoms and our cherished liberties spring from. And so that, as opposed to any person, is what we should toast. And so my toast tonight is to the Constitution of the United States, the Union League Legacy Foundation, and all who support it. Cheers.
Thank you, President Mills, and thank you all for your support. We look forward to seeing you at our programs. The bar is open, the food is available. I look forward to talking to all of you, and again, have a great evening. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.